In the future, everyone pilots an android avatar while their human body stays at home. This apparently leads to a society without murder until there's a murder. Bruce Willis stars in this absolute stinker that squanders every idea they had. This is Surrogates. Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
I come in peace.
This is a science fiction movie podcast. We get together and talk about sci-fi movie. On today's episode, we are reviewing a movie that won a vote on Patreon. We had a bunch of different, was it like a cyberpunk or AI or just stuff like, you know, kind of that type of variety of movie, but Surrogates
on our website, on our site we use, you officially called it 2000s Robots.
Yes. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a fair description of this, I think. This was the weird third pick, though. So that, like, this happens sometimes where I'll have like two ideas to fit a theme and I need to put in a third one. So I'll find something that fits it, but it's kind of the weird pick that I don't expect to win. And then it wins, and that is what Surrogates is. So Surrogates is a movie from 2009 starring Bruce Willis, as well as some other faces we'll get into in a little bit, and also directed by Jonathan Mostow, who he directed Terminator 3, and that, you know, I didn't know that going into the movie. I just saw his name in the opening titles and went, oh no, what's happening? No, I don't like this. But we will start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into the spoilers, and of course, if you're enjoying the show on YouTube, please hit the like button or rate us 5 stars on your podcast app of your choosing. All of that really does help, and you can also, of course, get bonus content and support us via Patreon or YouTube membership, but I'll tell you more about all that at the end of the episode, but it helps keep everything going. So, yes, the premise of this one is that we're in the future, and technically, I think we've passed the year that it was set in. But at the time of the movie coming out, we're in the future. I saw you making a face like you wanted to correct me, but it's the future relative to the movie, okay?
Right. Yeah, right? Absolutely.
And everyone uses surrogates, meaning robot bodies that they pilot from home so that real people aren't really going out into the world anymore. But there's been a murder, and Bruce Willis must investigate said murder, and it kind of calls into question this entire society they've built around the idea that we're all using these avatar robot bodies instead of just going out ourselves. So that is the basic premise of the movie. I assume you hadn't seen this. In fact, I'll even go one step further and say you'd never heard of this movie, but you tell me if I'm wrong.
I can't definitively say no to what you're saying there, but I feel like I have a very strong memory of like the marketing for this movie. I feel like I remember this when it was coming out being advertised, but yeah, I definitely never saw it. I had no idea what was going on in it until sitting down to watch it.
Yeah, I knew of it when it was coming out because I'd heard the premise. I don't think I ever saw it being marketed, though, weirdly. The opposite of you, where I was aware of it, but not because of marketing. The premise I'd heard was, like, this world has not had a murder in years because of the society that, you know, they formed, and now there's been a murder, so, like, a real detective has to get sort of back into the fray. I feel like that vague recollection of the premise is a little off based on what's actually in the movie, so I'll talk about how that doesn't quite line up as we get into it. But yeah, I mean, honestly, the premise is fine. The premise is very solid as far as science fiction premises go. But does the execution pay that off? Well, David, what did you think of Surrogates?
Oh boy. Oh boy, it's not great.
I think the word you're looking for is it's ass.
All right, I don't feel that strongly. I do think it's not good. I will say that. I here's the thing. Sitting down to watch it, I was constantly annoyed by little things. Like you said, the concept overall was a good draw. I like this idea of it. And there seemed, just by recollection alone, there seemed to be a big push for this around this era. Like, the Hollywood studios were finally catching up with the idea of, oh, wait a minute, people go online and they use avatars and like they don't actually talk to each other directly. They talk through these avatars. What if movie about that? Because I remember like 4 different movies coming out around this time that were kind of that idea. This, I feel like, is the most boring of them. It doesn't do much of anything with the concept except for this there's a vague detective mystery in there, and for the most part, from a top-down level, I do like the mystery aspect. I think that if you wrote it down on paper, it's a decent idea, but yeah, it's the execution the whole way down. That's the biggest problem. I was getting annoyed by things as simple as like the soundtrack and the score. Like there was so much of this top to bottom where it just felt like everything was the most simple / Hollywood option possible, and anything that was been interesting or heady or introspective was just wiped clean. There was nothing where we were really going that deep into it. So yeah, not the best the genre can offer, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I should probably point out that this is based on as the titles put it, a graphic novel, although I'm going to guess that maybe it was a comic book series first, just because,
This is the period where they were still very embarrassed by saying comic book.
Yes, so graphic novel is the term used by Robert Venditti. I noticed that name in that credit, but...
you love Robert Venditti.
Oh yeah, I know. I've never read the comic. I didn't know it was a comic, actually. I just noticed it in the opening titles and went, oh, okay. I did not know that, but fair enough. Yeah, this movie is playing into ideas that obviously are solid, and I think the overall premise, and obviously all these like allegories for going online and people being someone who isn't themselves. This idea that the person you're talking to says they're one thing but could be the complete opposite in the other end of the computer. Like that's very much what this is sort of tapping into. However, this movie is absolute dog shit in a variety of ways. One, it's only 87 minutes, and you can tell it's been absolutely just like gutted of any like depth that it could have had. Now, admittedly, the 87 minutes feels like 187 minutes. I check the time on this constantly, thinking, a good chunk has passed, I must be near the end, and I would check the time, and only like 4 minutes will have passed. I was like sludging through this thing. So that was a thing. But I mean, why is it so bad? Well, there's a number of things. It's paper thin. It doesn't have any emotional connection. When it attempts to try and sort of bank on that stuff, it just feels so hollow and lame and not earned. A big thing is the visuals, where they made this choice. Because everyone in the world pretty much is meant to be fake, they made this choice to give most of the characters like we'll call it like a CG kind of once-over in the face to make them smoother. And it's worse than Bruce Willis's surrogate, because he is de-aged as well. Because the whole idea is, of course, that if you're going to have a surrogate out there, you'd get the best version of yourself, and you'd have like a younger version. So we get super like smooth Bruce Willis with like a weird haircut kind of going on, and that. But everyone's guilty of it though.
Sixth Sense. It's around Sixth Sense period, Bruce Willis.
Yeah, but looking worse because it's fake. But yeah, that's what they're going for sure. But everyone's guilty of it though. Like I noticed it in his partner, I noticed it in other characters. Like there's just this uncanny valley, like additional layer to like a lot of the people in the movie.
Yeah, the way that I was imagining it, especially when I first saw it, it feels like a bad Snapchat filter. It feels like the thing where it's, okay, we're going to get rid of all the blemishes, we're going to get rid of all the imperfections, and that's what they're going for, because these things are supposed to be quote unquote perfect, a non-irregularity having robots. Like they're all supposed to be these super smooth things, but it feels too weird. It feels bad to look at.
Yeah, it just looks horrible, and I'm like, you could have just done this with a bit of makeup. Maybe not the de-aging of Bruce Willis, but all the other side characters who are just meant to be like the best versions of themselves, or maybe they've picked like supermodels out of a catalogue instead of their own face. That's fine. Have ridiculously attractive people in every role. The problem with that, though, that a lot of Hollywood movies just do that anyway, so it wouldn't stick out as much. But at least in theory, that should work, and just use makeup to make them be a little perfect, or even not even perfect. Like if you want them to look a little fake, then yeah, just do that with makeup. Just wax up some, to make them look a little bit plasticky. But at least if it was practical, if it was physical, it would be like, okay, I can see that there's like an odd quality to them, and it would stick out as being like fake in a real way, as strange as that sounds, as opposed to this weird filter that you're slapping on them, and it just looks ugly the entire time. And the movie's so full of that you can't escape it. You're constantly being, even when Bruce Willis is his real person for like, you know, like the back 2/3 of the movie, you're still dealing with this and every other character that he's talking to.
Yeah, and I do think that is a mistake that they made. I get why they did it, but obviously all of the other actors that he's playing against are the same age as their surrogate. He's the only one who's older. He looks older than that. And that's just because most of the movie he is being played by his physical form, not the surrogate. So it just makes sense from a CGI standpoint, makeup standpoint, where they're going to make up everyone else to look older. He's going to be CGI to look younger. But the tech just barely wasn't there. I think if they had given it like 3-4 more years, they could have gotten away with this in a little bit. But it just, at this point, it wasn't ready for what they were trying to do.
I disagree with that. I still think it's still not there. It still looks bad in movies. Like, I still don't think it looks good. It looks better than this, sure, but it's not good.
I'm specifically saying with the intention of making it look fake, not making it look like photoreal people. Sure. I think that they could have gotten away with that.
I see what you're saying. I still think I'd find it distracting versus just giving them some plasticky makeup that sort of gives them a bit of a, you know, physical uncanny valley intentionally. I still think that would be better than this. Because ultimately this is still just going to always feel like we've got like a weird CG filter, like... It almost looks like AI in a weird way. Like, it has that look. It's not, but it almost has that kind of look to the faces at times. And that's, you know, unnerving. It's not nice.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I won't spoil what I did, but the homework movie that I did for this one is a lot more reliant on practical effects. It's a lot less on the special, and boy, can you feel it. Boy, can you feel how different it is when they go ahead and just actually make the things into real life rather than, a computer can handle that, whatever. Yeah,
for sure. That was the glaring thing immediately. But I think even just in terms of like the direction and the script, like I've not seen a lot of Jonathan Mostow's films. Like I've seen Terminator 3, but this definitely feels like, Terminator 3 was his better movie, and I don't like that. This feels like even more of a sloppy, like churned out for Hollywood, just make a quick kind of like sci-fi thriller that we can put some marketing into and make some quick money. It does not feel like anyone here is making something they believe in or making some science fiction film. And I think I remember hearing the premise and hoping, maybe this is going to be good. Maybe this is going to be Bruce Willis's next proper real movie. And sadly, this was actually kind of just as he was starting to transition into not really being in good movies forever anymore. Like this was kind of like the tail end of him being in like theatrical releases. Once we get past 2010, other than maybe some like Expendables cameos or whatever, like we're starting to get into really just the crud that he was churning out for quick paychecks. So
yeah, I do want to say what this film reminded me of in terms of like style, tone, stuff like that, or at least the way that it presented itself, is there were two films that really jumped out to me. Neither of which, strangely enough, we've done on this show. The first of which is In Time, which actually came out 2 years later. Mainly from the viewpoint of a big aspect of that movie is that everyone is in the most ideal form of their body. Like everyone's at that perfect 20-something age and everyone looks beautiful and whatever like that. So that just on a surface level reminded me of that. But the big one, and the reason I think this movie was made, was, I don't even know if you remember this one, the movie Gamer, starring Gerard Butler.
I mean, I've never seen it, but I remember it existing.
That movie, it came out literally 3 weeks before this movie, and made by a different studio. It has the same sort of thing of like your online persona and like interacting in the real world and stuff like that. I think that this was basically a case of dueling movies to an extent, where someone heard like, we're doing that, and then the other one comes out. But Gamer has its faults. It's not a great movie. It definitely was a flop, but I think it had infinitely more style than this one did. Surrogates was the bland version of Gamer, top to bottom.
It's the dueling movies, but not at the A tier of like a blockbuster. Or even a B tier. This is D tier dueling movies of like stuff no one gives a shit about.
Yep. This is somebody seeing that Asylum came out with something and being like, "Oh, we should do something based off that."
Yeah, it's funny because obviously there's a bunch of faces in this movie. Obviously, we got Bruce Willis, which we've mentioned in the lead role, but his partner at the FBI is Radha Mitchell, who people might know from Pitch Black, but she's popped up in a bunch of things over the years in various roles. That's the main thing that springs to mind for me, though. Ving Rhames is in this, and he's sporting... He doesn't have the CG face, necessarily, but he does have a silly big wig and beard that feels goofy.
He's full Rasta man in this. Yeah. He's got, like, the huge dress. It feels like their first choice was... just character-wise, was Samuel L. Jackson from the Matrix movies. And they were just going to throw the same wig on him. But then, you know, hey, Bruce Willis and Ving Rhames, let's just do a Pulp Fiction thing for 5 minutes.
Wait, who from what movies? What were you comparing him to there?
I said Samuel L. Jackson from the Matrix, like the Morpheus sort of big persona thing. But then I was saying, got Ving Rhames, so may as well do Pulp Fiction for 5 minutes.
What's Samuel L. Jackson got to do with that?
Ving Rhames was in Pulp Fiction with Bruce Willis.
Wait, hold on. Am I having a stroke? What's Samuel L. Jackson got to do with The Matrix?
Oh, no, sorry. That's not... I did the thing that literally... Like, he's commented on interviews this happened. Yeah, no, my bad. Not Samuel L. Jackson. Lawrence Fishburne.
Like, you said it so confidently like 3 times, and I'm like...
Yeah.
Am I, like, what's happening here? Like, there must be some sort of weird reason why he's saying... okay, fine, you were just having a brain fart. That's fine, but, like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It didn't help that Discord cut out a little bit what you were saying as well, so I was kind of like just recapping everything I said.
I was like, he's so confident. Yeah, he's like a cult leader. He's like kind of like the all natural human resistance kind of thing. We're not giving into the surrogate stuff. Bruce Willis's wife is played by Rosamund Pike, and this was kind of probably before I really knew her from anything, honestly. But like, she's here in this role. So yeah, again, we got a bunch of faces there. And then who do you get to be the inventor of this technology? You get James Cromwell, who often plays this type of role in these types of movies, especially in the 2000s. This is perfect casting for him. I
am... It's such a specific typecasting. I don't know why. Is it just like they look at him and say like, yeah, you look like you could be a slightly evil Steve Jobs. That's what we're going for here.
Because I feel it's not the exact same type of role, but I feel like Old Man Scientist was like, he was cast as that in like Star Trek First Contact, and I feel like from then on he was just kind of always put into these types of role. Honestly, the movie this makes me think of the most, which is a popular movie that I don't like very much, but it's definitely aping the style and going for the kind of the vibe, especially with the investigation angle. It's taking a lot from Minority Report. And
I felt that.
I get that this is based on a comic. Now, maybe... So I don't know if the comic took a lot from that movie, and that's where the influence is coming from, or if they took the comic and they made it as Minority Report as they could in the process of making a movie. I don't know which way around it is, but I definitely feel a lot of Minority Report and like the vibes they're going for in this.
Yeah, I would assume the latter, especially based off the director and how it's just like, he feels like the kind of guy when the studio gives notes, he's like, absolutely, I'll get that done. I'm going to compromise any vision I had for the sake of studio notes.
Yeah, he feels like such a generic workman, just I'll come in and put together, whatever the production company wants and, call it a day. That's very much the vibe I got. So yeah, there's like a list of people in this that you will recognize from things, and that's, that's fine, but it's still just like, they're all wasted in this. If you're a fan of any of these people, you're not going to come out of this thinking, that's a movie they're all proud of. They're all proud of their roles in this. No, they're all... I'm not going to say they're embarrassed, because I don't think any one of them, other than maybe the wig and stuff on Ving Rhames, maybe he's regretting that, but the rest of them, I don't think like their roles are embarrassing in and of themselves. They're just kind of like in a movie that never amounts to anything that it's like could be or aspires to be. Yeah.
This feels like the sort of thing that, like, if you met them at a con or something and brought up a copy of Surrogates, they'd be like, really? You want to sign that? All right, whatever. That's you.
I bet there's people that do. Like every bad movie from every actor's filmography has at least a few fans who are like, no, I'm going to get them to sign this. You know?
Yeah, and again, I think that this movie, when they're bringing up the topics that they want to bring up, they do feel like they at least thought about it. They had a few things that like, okay, how would this interact? How would that interact? And I think that the world that they built up is interesting in concept. And I can see why people would be interested in that. There's a lot going on in the background that would be very interesting to explore. The movie just didn't do it. The movie didn't want to do that.
It also, it's not thought out enough, though. Like, I agree it's interesting in concept. I also think the movie actually, they didn't put enough thought into how this world works. I think there's a lot of pitfalls here that don't make sense to me. Some of it's based on what I thought the movie was going to be, based on the synopsis I heard, like, 15 plus years ago. But some of it is just, like, things that are inconsistent. For example, like, it's not as much of like, I thought it was going to be a big focal point of the movie that this is the first murder in years because, like, we're all living in this robot, like, drone society. But
yeah,
it is brought up, like, but it's brought up in a very nonchalant way where Bruce Willis just kind of turns around and is like, this might be a homicide. When was the last time you had one of those? And I was like, but wait a minute. My assumption when I heard years ago that, so Bruce Willis is going to be almost like in a Demolition Man style fashion where he's like woken up and let out into the world as like the one human cop because like this is an old school murder case and he has to do it. That's not quite what this is. But my assumption at the time because of that was that, this entire world is nothing but androids and it's almost maybe even illegal for real human beings to just go about walking around. But this movie makes it very clear, even Bruce Willis early on says to his wife, hey, why don't we just go us as human beings on vacation? So clearly it's still a choice and some people are still choosing to just go about and be in the real world. So I'm like, how has there not been a murder in 5-10 years or whatever it's been? That doesn't, like, there's still enough people walking around. It doesn't make any goddamn sense.
Well, you say there's enough people walking around, but they specifically say at the beginning that all the people who are against, who actually have like a deep-seated hatred for the androids, they're basically put on what's the equivalent of Native American reservations, where there's just tiny little areas where they stay and they don't come into the outside world, and it's kind of like slums or whatever.
No, pull it out, because that's the extremists. That's the extremists. Yeah. What about the people who are just not into it, but aren't like protesting?
Yeah. That's the thing. The way that they play surrogates in this is kind of like owning a smartphone, where it's like everyone just does now. It's not something where there is anybody who actually just walks around without owning a smartphone, which for a smartphone, I mean, it kind of, it just has happened. It's whatever. But for surrogates, this all happens over the timeline of like, 15 years from invention to mass adoption to the point of like everyone's got one. It's crazy quick. But it's weird that there's not a single person anywhere in any of these cities that's like, I think I'll actually go running today instead of I'm going to sit in my chair and just pilot my robot to go running instead.
That's the thing. They must get some exercise because not all the people who are using surrogates are all sitting there fat and like unhealthy. Like they must be doing something to keep in physically somewhat decent like health.
I want an exact shot-for-shot remake of this movie, except anytime it's a human character, they are morbidly obese. I think that would be hilarious.
But no, I mean, the way they talk about it and the way that it is just a choice to go do something as human beings, I have to assume that some people who use the surrogate bodies for their regular day-to-day routine still choose to do things as human beings at least often enough that they're not extremists who are protesting and living in some weird reservation where they're talking about the robot apocalypse, but they're being healthy and they're moderating their usage and making sure they still have some real world experience. Like that entire middle ground is just absent and it is never even questioned in this movie. And because we know that some people are still wandering around, there are still real people out there, it makes certain things this movie does in the last act absolutely absurd. And we'll talk about it in spoilers when we get there, but there's just entire things where the movie just wants you to take things for granted, and I'm like, no, I can't. In fact, you have set up that we can take it for granted, so, like, you're just flawed. right? And yes, I get that there's like cool little Easter eggs. Like there's a poster for like extreme football where they're ripping each other's heads off because they're robots. So why wouldn't they just do that? Yeah, sure, that's a fun little thing to throw in the background. But that's not dealing with the larger like actual questions that this world would raise and how people are using it.
Oh. No, Pete, I'm going to give you a simpler one that for the crime rate murder thing. First and foremost, think about this from the viewpoint of like how people act on the internet. The moment that there is a disconnect between you and the persona that you face, how many people online are just the worst possible version of themselves? Yeah. How many of them are just immediately going to go out and commit more crimes? But ignoring that, let's assume that because they have a little bit at the beginning showing like Supreme Court cases and whatever, talking about how surrogacy and blah, blah, blah. Let's assume that everyone is so internally linked to their persona that they don't do that stuff. There is no anonymity. They have explicitly said that there are a bunch of houses where the person is hooked into this machine and cannot interact with the outside world. How is burglary not skyrocketing all the time? Yeah. Where we know these houses are empty because there's nobody in them that is awake and not piloting a robot.
Yep, that's obviously a big concern. I mean, I think the idea you're supposed to assume is that there are crimes happening and people are killing robots, but because they're just the robots, it's not homicide. It's like, oh, it's not a murder because the person's fine. It's like an insurance claim to just get a replacement at that point, and that's all they've been dealing with as far as violence goes anyway, because no one's actually dying. And that obviously changes at the start of the movie when this weapon's introduced that kills the person operating the robot, and it's like all of a sudden a mass crisis. So it's like, okay, that's fine. I can get on board with that, but they really don't go into this enough to really like flesh it out and make me feel like we're exploring the ideas of like how different people are using this. Yeah, they bring up a couple of times that some people aren't who they appear to be. Like, back home, they're actually someone else, right? And that's fine. Again, I'd love to explore more of that, but it's not really like the good version of this would be really exploring the person at the center of the story, which would be Bruce Willis's character. He obviously brings up that he's got problems, but he's already kind of there at the start of the movie. He's already suggesting, hey, we don't do anything as just me and you anymore. We should go and do something as like real people. And it's like scoffed at, like, oh, don't be ridiculous, honey. Like, we're, surrogates is the way now. But like, yeah, we really should be going through an arc of a main character who is like really rediscovering why we should be human and interact with the world. And it should be getting into like the idea of addiction to technology. Basically, it should be a movie about learning to touch grass. I mean, that's effectively what it should be. But instead, it's focused on the murder investigation. There's a conspiracy, all that stuff, all the generic stuff that just feels super, done to death. And that's the stuff that felt very Minority Report to me. Was just all the, all the conspiracy stuff that we'll get into in spoilers. But So yeah, I mean, even if we're going as far as what else James Cromwell's done, I was also getting a lot of iRobot out of this as well. Yeah. Which I think was on the vote for this, by the way. That was one of the movies that could have won this vote, but did not. Man, this was just going to be a lose-lose situation across the board, no matter what we got picked. There was points in this movie where I was like, are we doing an extra reels today? No, it's an Ace episode. It's not extra reels, it's Ace. Yeah. But it's not nearly as entertaining enough to be an extra reels. I think it's bad enough to be one, though. Like, I wouldn't blink twice at this on extra reels. I would. I think that this one is... Don't get me wrong, there's flaws to it and everything like that. I do think the execution is poor, but I think that the world itself is interesting enough that... I'm not going to say it balances it out, but it keeps it out of that awful range for me. No, it's awful. You're talking nonsense. This movie is awful. It's trash. All right. But I just want to make clear for everybody here, Pete specifically told me right before we started recording that he is hungry today. So... this is the hanger coming out. No. This is like, this movie is garbage. Like I was watching it and like I knew early as well. Like it doesn't take long. Like by the time you see Bruce Willis's face, like 5 minutes into the movie, it's trash. Like this is one of these. We're settling in. Like and I'm not saying that it didn't have a chance of winning me back. But like you kind of know sometimes you get a couple of scenes, you get a vibe for what the movie's doing, how it handles the tension or suspense, how quickly it's been edited, that sort of thing. combined with the bad CG faces, and you're like, okay, this is like, I'm in for a stinker here. And it was a stinker through and through. There was never a good scene. There's obviously ideas on paper that could be good. That I'll agree to that. But I don't think there's ever a good scene in this movie. They're all bad. So,
yeah, I'd say there's some things, on paper that were cool scenes, like especially when we get some more of the action stuff. But even then, there's one action scene where I just started laughing, not because it was entertaining, but because it was just so poorly conceived, top to bottom.
And that's the thing. If you're going to tell me, because they're in android bodies, they can do things that are technically superhuman, that's one thing. But when you don't really elaborate on it and just have it happen in an action scene where someone just jumps kind of absurdly high, it's just kind of like, you really didn't explore this enough. You didn't explore the idea that we could have these robots jumping like 5 stories out of the air and doing stuff like that. It's so underused.
I genuinely thought that was just a mistake or like a deleted scene or something, because every other character has normal human abilities. Nobody is shown running fast or jumping high or anything. And then all of a sudden it cuts to this scene and it's like, I'm able to Superman / Incredible Hulk leap across the city. It's like, what? Since when? When did this become a thing?
Yeah, again, it's the sort of thing where if we're exploring, like, does everyone have this ability? Is this something that law enforcement, like, androids are given as like a specific talent because they're their job? You know, like, they kind of vaguely touch on how wars are fought with androids now, but they don't really, they don't go into it enough to make it that interesting. It's like, okay, of course they'd use these surrogates to fight wars, but like, how does that change tactics? And I mean, honestly, there's a whole movie there about, aren't political leaders just kind of playing a big video game then at that point if they're just fighting wars with androids?
Yeah, I mean, there's also the question of, is this something that's widespread? We see it from the American perspective, but is this something where even like third world countries have this, or are they fighting with real people still? Is this the equivalent of mass drone strikes essentially now?
Yeah, there's so many topics you could go into, and the movie just like has glances at it and then just gets back onto its generic plot, and that we go from there. So I even noticed the music. You said you had thoughts on like the music annoying you, but I didn't even notice it.
Honestly, I blotted it out by the time the movie ended, but there was as I was settling in, as we were getting into it, it just was the most generic, like semi-tense, but still, it felt like a police procedural, like on TV. Like we just copied that music over, and it was so boring by the time we got to the point where I was able to just completely tune it out. I wasn't even caring at that point. The only other thing I do want to bring up, if we're moving into more spoilerish territory, is the fact that the character development, I'm not giving
the spoiler warning yet, to be clear. We're not in spoiler shit.
No, I know, but like, I got that vibe we were moving in that direction.
Well, yeah, but I need to give the warning first before you actually start talking spoilery things.
Yeah, well, this isn't a spoiler, but the thing that was getting me was very early on, we get the character development aspect of him. I won't say specifically what in case you consider it to be a spoiler, but it's used as the backdrop for why there is trouble between him and his wife. Because that's the main focus on the B plot, is the marriage is on the rocks. How is he going to fix it? Blah, blah, blah. And every single time we cut to it, it feels like the movie's saying this is such a deep emotional point. And all I could think each time is, just get divorced. Like, I don't feel like you guys actually like each other at all anymore. You clearly want very different things. You clearly have had this traumatic stuff happen in your relationship. Even by the time we got to the end, I don't think I got the vibe that there was going to be a happy relationship there. This felt like it was just a exercise in misery from top to bottom of who's going to break their will first and become unhappy for the sake of their partner.
It's just it's poor writing for one. It's a lack of chemistry for two. I think there is like a story that it in theory could tell there that's quite touching. I'm thinking a lot about severance and how someone uses the severance process to deal with something they've been through. And like that tackles that way better and kind of gets into kind of the the pros and cons of and like how unhealthy it is to try and like deal with it that way. But yeah, the movie just doesn't have the weight to even touch on that subject here with anything other than just like the lightest like Hollywood touch of just we're using this for cheap drama and nothing else. We're not actually exploring anything. We're not going to get into the character's head. Like the wife should be a character, but she feels more like she's just there as like a I don't know, like a just a supporting thing for the main characters. Whereas like what she's going through and like the way she's using surrogacy to deal with something feels like it should be like a major character story. Yeah, but it isn't.
It also feels completely separate from the main story as well. Like it doesn't feel like it's holding a plot on its own, and it's also not integrated with the A plot either. So instead, you have the A plot progressing, which on its own is not great. And then every once in a while, we fully stop that. We focus on the wife for 10 to 15 minutes, and then switch back over.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll give the spoiler warning. We'll get into the movie then from here on. So you have been warned. Yeah, I mean, the movie sort of recaps the history over the opening titles, but the real start of the film is that the inventor of all this stuff, James Cornwell's character, Cantor, he has loaned out one of his surrogates, because he's got many, to his son, who is a college-age student, who is... Well, he's not even in the city, he's still at his college dorm, we find out later, but he's using this surrogate to go, he's meant to go to the opera, but he decides to go to like a fancy nightclub instead and picks up a blonde, right? And this blonde, it turns out later, is like, not, I mean, I wouldn't say not a real person, but it's basically someone whose job it is to just play a sexy woman for guys to pick up at clubs. It's actually this fat dude who is, you know, at his place.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's his job. I took it as this is a guy who's just catfishing on the internet, pretty much.
I don't know, there was a way when the FBI agent showed up after everything happened and they talked about it, it kind of sounded like it wasn't like a trick. It was more, I mean, not to say that the guy, like the rich, you know, college student knew it was like a fake, but it felt like it was like someone like maybe it is catfishing, but it's more like a sort of dedicated scam where I don't know how they make money necessarily, but it felt less like someone was just doing it for kicks and more like this was like an income. This was like I don't know, because they called them something specific. I can't remember what it was, but anyway, like the whole thing is that when they're in the alley kissing, this third party shows up, who's clearly a human being. They call him a meat sack and fires this electro pulse thing at them, and it fries the brain of the androids. But the main plot point here is that it also kills the operators. So it kills this fat guy who's controlling the blonde, and it also kills the son of the rich guy who built all these things in the first place. So it's like, okay, we actually have and we actually take a little bit before we even get to that knowledge, because at first it's just like, oh, we're showing up to the crime, we're dealing with the fact that these androids have been fried, because this is still a crime, it's vandalism technically. However, there's a couple of things that feel a bit weird here, and when they find the operator, the blonde, he's lying there dead, and they're like, oh shit, this has killed him remotely through the android, this is a big deal. And sure enough, eventually someone finds the body of the college kid as well at his dorm, sitting in his VR chair or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So that's the setup. That's how everything kicks off and starts our murder mystery, if you will.
Yeah, and even in this early segment, that idea where there is this deeper world to it, I can see it peeking in. Like the landlord who lets them into the apartment is currently like essentially an iRobot style looking robot because her body's in the shop and she just has a loner. They use slang words constantly where the surrogates are called surries. Like that feels like a lived in world, something that's just been adopted because obviously slang words are going to be used. I like the aspect where there is a train ride that Bruce Willis hops on afterwards, and you see that there are little portable charging stations on the train for them to hop into in case they're like low on charge or whatever. It's tiny little things like that speak to a much larger world that I like. I really like the idea that this is a lived in world, but then the plot's just so dull and boring.
The problem is though, is that like tiny things on their own like that aren't enough. Like that's fine to like that would be nice little details to add in if the actual emotional story at the center was working. But all of that is so drab. And then the entire time all this is playing out, I can't help but just look at the stupid face on Bruce Willis with the CG. And I'm just constantly like looking at that and being kind of disgusted by it. And that's all I'm thinking. I'm not really enjoying the story for how it's playing out. So like, you know, I mean, you're right, these details are there, but if everything feels very hollow because that's all they are, they're just like, you know, details. I mean, these are probably the things they got from the comic, or these little details, because they feel like thought went into them, and then the actual story is kind of stripped bare to the point that it's at. Because, you know, we also learn around here that Bruce Willis, you know, he goes home, he goes into his charging pod, and the real Bruce Willis gets up, and he's older, he's bald, he's got a goatee, all that. And we find out that his wife never comes out for real. Like, only her surrogate ever comes out. And we also find out that they lost a child in a car accident. And that's why the wife is so determined to never be out in the real world anymore, because they lost a kid, and this is safer, right? She can't go out the door unless she's the surrogate.
Yeah, but I mean, she's not playing it up from the safety angle inherently. It's more of just that's more distancing and trauma sort of stuff.
No, but that's something we more find out later. Is the idea that, like, you know, because there's an ad on TV later about how, oh, get a surrogate for your child so they're always safe, and they get upset and turn it off. And it's kind of this idea of like, well, we made that mistake with him, so I am never making that mistake again with me, right? Kind of thing. So
yeah, for sure. By the way, I've just been clicking through the comic, just taking a look at it. I can't find a single thing in common. I'm not sure they adapted the plot at all.
Fair enough. Good to know. Yeah, because that was even a bit later on as well, when he's like, I'm not going to get a surrogate. Once his gets damaged, he's like, I'm not going to get one again. And she's like, no, I never want you leaving this house again without a surrogate. You know, so, which is honestly, that moment's the only moment in the entire movie that I was convinced she cares about him, because every other scene, it feels like she's just like annoyed that he's around because, he's getting in the way of my surrogate lifestyle, because I'm a beautician who goes and like touches up surrogates' faces for work.
Yeah. And again, I as much as I'm saying that I like all of these little touches, these little background things, I actually get more annoyed when it's brought to the forefront. It's much later on in the movie, but we get this idea that the party drug is basically bringing in a cattle prod, an electric shock taser, and they just start shocking each other. And I'm like, that's dumb. I don't like that. That's a bit too much on the nose of like, oh yeah, no, this is how we mess with our brains by shocking ourselves. I'm like, okay, but we've already established that there shouldn't be any way for the surrogate to interact with the main human body that's controlling it, and which is why the weapon's so big of a deal. So how is this doing anything for you?
It's not about shocking their brain. It's just about the sensation they feel in their surrogate body. So, but the weird thing is, though, is like Bruce Willis even says, oh, I think he calls it jacking. You're jacking now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but why would that even be looked down upon? Because it's just android bodies getting literal electric shock. This isn't the same as doing crack. Like, it's just it's so far removed from it. Like, the worst thing that's going to happen is you'll damage the body and you'll need to pay for a repair. Like, I mean, like, it's maybe financially irresponsible, but we don't get any evidence that anyone actually gets damaged doing this. So I don't see why it would even matter.
You know what I think I really wanted out of this? What would have, again, it needed to explore on something more than whatever the plot is here, but I think I would love to have seen a class difference in the bodies. Like an idea that like the really poor people, like the fact that the college kid had to borrow his father's surrogate is a little background detail that implies that the college kid can't afford one. But
they kind of hint at it at one scene when when the partner tries to make him buy a new one. And the guy's like, oh, like the basics are just, basics, sight and sound. If you want extra like feelings and sensations, that costs extra. So it sounds like the cheaper ones don't experience everything the way that the more expensive ones do.
Right, but they still like look too good. They still look like normal. I would like that sort of like the landlord coming in. She has like a very robotics visible sort of thing. I think that's kind of more. And then obviously the opposite side is the rich people have more and more lifelike looking ones where we don't have that weird Snapchat filter on there and they just look like people.
Yeah, well, there's at least one because it's a surprise that they're an android later on. True. So conveniently, he never had the filter on him, even though all the other rich ones do. But whatever. Yeah, so I mean, honestly, I don't know why I go through this in order because it's just like one,
That's
it's
fine.
uninteresting, and two, like I don't know if I'm even going to remember it. So he investigates. They go to talk to a few people. They try and talk to the rich guy. They only talk to a surrogate of him, of course, and he just kind of shuts down halfway through the conversation. So like, well, I guess that interview's over.
Yeah. Well, he shuts down after they specifically say like, "Hey, if this was your surrogate, is it possible someone was trying to kill you?" And he's like, "Oh my God, I'm responsible for my son's death." And then we get to see the real him crying like a baby in real life.
Well, we don't know he's responsible at the time. That's a reveal later on.
No, he yeah, during that scene he specifically says it, where he's like, "Oh, are you saying that like whoever killed my surrogate was after me and it ended up killing my son
that
instead?
part.
Boo hoo hoo."
Well,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that part, sure, but like later on, we find out that it's even more like, you know, like, the reason why
his
they're
hands much more in the pot.
the reason why they're trying to kill him in the first place is because he's like going. Okay, just to explain this because I can't be arsed going through with the speculation side of it, right? So.
Sure.
Right, so Ving Rhames' character, the anti-android dude who's the prophet for all these people, and like every scene he's in is super goofy. Turns out he's an android, and he's been controlled by James Cromwell, who is literally created the opposite side, at the very least took over at some point as him as an android. And he's decided that he doesn't like the android world that he's created, so he's trying to like kill everyone who's in an android or is connected to an android. He's went complete like basically just like genocidal maniac, you know, because it's not just that he wants to destroy the androids, he's going to do it in a way that kills everyone who's using them, and he's calling it a rebirth of the human race. So he is went absolute schizo. But because he's opposing all this stuff, the other side, which is basically just the government, the FBI who are in charge, are the ones that hired the guy at the start. Because the guy at the start who kills the androids and therefore the people connected to them, he gets killed halfway through the movie. He's not like the big threat. He's just like a hired person. He was hired by the FBI to do this, right? And that's what it turns out to be, because they want to take out Cromwell, because Cromwell's the one bringing the uprising against the androids, and the society that we now live in relies on them too much. They don't want them to go away. Yada yada yada. You can kind of see the ideas in there somewhere of like something like interesting, some good science fiction, but everything's rushed through, because again, this movie is not even 90 minutes long, right? It like once you take off the credits, we're like 84 minutes, which is merciful in some ways, but also means that everything is so thin and rushed through that you cannot possibly get the weight for any of it that you would want in a science fiction story. So yeah. I mean, we're left with how it is. So yeah, they talk to him. They talk to people at the company making the androids. There's not much to say really there.
No, they just basically like, we're not responsible. We just make the stuff. We don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Bruce Willis makes one of them uncomfortable at one point by saying, "I don't even know if you're an attractive woman. You could be a fat guy with his dick out right now, for all I know."
And she like adjusts herself, and I'm like, that's a yes. All right.
Yeah, clearly. I always wanted to cut to the. Although, to be fair, it doesn't look like people who are like connected to surrogates like can do anything while they're doing it. So I don't think they can jack off whilst they're like piloting a surrogate. I could be wrong.
Probably
but
not.
It doesn't seem like it.
This is the far off future of 2017. There's a lot of extra technology that you could handle there.
Yeah. Is it 2017 in the present day part, or when like they started designing them? Present day, okay.
Yeah. The comic is apparently 2054. I don't know why they changed that. That seems far more reasonable.
Because it sounds cooler if it's right around the corner, I guess.
Well, when we wrote the comic back in 2005, we didn't understand how fast we'd be making robots, because look, we're doing it right now. 2025, look at all the robots.
Dear. Anyway, the big thing is that we get introduced to this guy who is not a surrogate. He sort of monitors all the surrogates though. And we find out that this is a recent thing. This is not something they've been doing for a long time. This is new. They point this out. That he actually can get a warrant to just disconnect a surrogate if he detects that one is going to be used for a crime. So he gets a warrant quickly and shuts someone down who's about to beat up someone. Although I assume the person they're going to beat up is also a surrogate, which means that there's less like tension in it than there usually would be, you know?
You know, I never actually thought about that, because they play it up as if there was going to be like like an actual bad I can't exactly say what it is on YouTube, but like you're right that it would be a surrogate. You would think at the very least like you could just unplug and say like, well, I'm not dealing with that right now.
Yeah, well, because that's effectively what happens when Bruce Willis gets in trouble when they're chasing down. Because I guess this guy catches the bad guy using CCTV, right? And it's like, hey, he's here on a motorbike. So we get like a helicopter chase where Bruce Willis runs off to go and follow him. And at one point, when this guy pulls out his electro gun that'll fry everyone and the real people that are connected to them, Bruce Willis just kind of ducks, doesn't get hit, and like it cuts to him taking off his headset. And I'm like, yeah, that's maybe how you save yourself here, is you just like disconnect before he hits you with it so that you're safe. But they don't really play with that for the rest of the movie, that all you have to do to like avoid the danger is like just disconnect, because seemingly you can still do that at any time.
I mean, they don't even really fire the gun for the rest of the movie. The gun is just a MacGuffin that needs to get to the end. Yeah, no, the one thing that I would like to talk about the disconnecting the bodies in the middle of the crime thing is that one of the agents specifically points out, wait a minute, that's not legal. That's not something that we are able to do. And he's like, whatever, it's our little secret and we're helping people. It's fine. How is it a secret? The moment you do it, people know it's happening. This isn't a thing like a wiretap where you can pretend you get the information by other means. Like, the bodies were disconnected in the middle of the crime. How do you play that off? Also, you got a warrant to do it. How are you getting warrants? I mean, warrants have paper trails. They're, like, the warrant made it seem like this is an official thing. And then, like, a minute later, he's like, yeah, this is kind of a secret. Yeah, don't tell anyone. I mean, if you say secret from the public, you can get, like, under the wraps warrants, like warrants for wiretaps and stuff like that. But yeah, the whole thing is played off as this thing of nobody can know that this exists, but it's directly impacting the public, so obviously they should know it exists.
Also, like, again, that's the other sci-fi aspect to this that should really be explored, is like, you can hack in and look at the POV of anyone using a surrogate body. You can shut them down. You can, like, detect if they're doing something. Like, I get that technically you might be able to stop some bad things like this woman who's about to be attacked, but the privacy concerns of you being able to just look at anyone's POV at any time are so gargantuan that really should be the argument for why we shouldn't have these things, or they should be in heavy moderation. But,
when it's a female agent who's the one who's doing it, she shakes the guy's hand and introduces herself, and he like looks at her and says like, oh yeah, you are. And you can get this sense of like, he's been looking through her eyes or has been like doing some weird skeevy stuff, and they just brush it under the rug because in the movie sense, he's a good guy. He's the one who's working to stop bad guys. But that little bit of skeeviness is an entire plot on its own that could have been involved in.
I mean, everything they talk about in this scene is forgotten about after the scene ends. It's not explored at all. It's never brought up. It's never addressed. It's never something that's running throughout the movie and characters argue for and against. And it's kind of like, in Dark Knight when Batman uses the sonar thing, and it's like, Morgan Freeman's like, oh no, like, this is not right. And obviously Batman knows that, and that's why, well, we're not going to keep this. We're going to like get rid of it as soon as we've caught this, terrible person that we're trying to find. But that's the debate that comes up. And that one or two scenes does a better job of it than this movie that in theory should be built entirely around these privacy concerns and how unethical it is that people can just be looked into at any time with how they're using their droids. So yeah, it feels so badly undercooked. Anyway, so Bruce Willis is chasing the bad guys in a helicopter. The bad guys firing his electrical cannon at them, all that. He disconnects, but he reconnects. He's lost an arm. We get a chase. We get him jumping absurdly high and whatever else. Ultimately, though, he runs into like this like haven for humans, right? Real humans, and they all kind of like mob up on Bruce Willis and like shoot him and destroy his android. So he ends up injured, like even for real, he's kind of injured from like all the trauma, I guess.
This is the other part that gets me, especially with it being set in 2017, is these reservations. They talk multiple times throughout this idea of like, oh, we have treaties. Like they're treating these as a separate nation of people, and the surrogate users are not allowed to go into that area and their laws don't apply and whatever. But like this, as we said in the beginning, is the equivalent of owning a smartphone. how the hell do they get this to be an entirely separate nation rather than just treating it like the Amish?
Yeah, also, again, this comes back to the whole purely defined. Is like, there's no rules that anyone has to use a surrogate, right? Tons of people could still be in the regular cities and civilization without using a surrogate, at least not all the time. Again, the moderates, like, where are they? So all these questions are just kind of ignored. They don't really think about it. But this is the point, though, where Bruce Willis no longer has a surrogate. Obviously, his wife finds him on the floor. He's in the hospital. They have a couple of bits. Honestly, the other thing they completely brush past is that when he gets out of the hospital, that for like 5 seconds, they're like, oh yeah, he's not been outside in his real body for a long time. So the sounds of the traffic and all the people are making him feel weird and anxious. And I'm like, oh, there's almost an interesting little like thing we could explore here of like him really having to get used to like walking around again. But at the same time, it's like, well, okay, but if he's that not used to walking around, how is his real physical body in such decent shape? Like,
right.
You know, if all he's ever doing at home is getting up to go to the bathroom and maybe go to the kitchen, but otherwise is always the surrogate, then how is he not just, you know?
Yeah. You have to assume that back at home, like in the chair or whatever, there's like an electric shock thing that like keeps your muscles toned or something. Because if you pull on that thread, it all falls apart.
Yeah, it's just, it doesn't make any sense. So he wants to investigate the crime. His partner tries to get him to get a new surrogate, but he's like, nope, I'm not having this. I'm not doing it. So whatever. Okay. And then from there, honestly, this movie's pacing and its flow and structure is just so sloppy. Like, because normally I find it very easy to just remember, like, sequence to sequence what most of a movie is, because it just flows. It makes sense because, of course, this one scene flows into the next. But honestly, here, I don't really have that for this. Like, there's a whole section where he's like, oh, I'm going to, like, go into the haven for the humans and, like, talk to them and find out what happened. But by the time he goes in, Ving Rhames' character, the Prophet's already killed the guy who had the electric gun because, and it turns out, of course, because technically this guy killed Cornwell's son, and because Cornwell's piloting Ving Rhames, it makes sense that he wants to kill this guy. He wants revenge. But Bruce Willis goes in, we see them like have like a sermon or something where he's like, the human 2.0 revolution is going to happen, the rebirth, blah, blah, blah. Yep. Bruce Willis gets beat up by his cronies, and he's like, oh, it feels different when you're being beat up for real in the flesh, doesn't it? Detective, or whatever he says. And it's like, I don't know, it all feels like just like generic stock, like any movie you've ever seen where a character goes into like a religious kind of compound and they just like beat him up and throw him out. It's just that sequence. Yeah.
But you're right, because then I'm just like, okay, so from there, it's like, all right, he's more suspicious, or maybe he's going to be trying to do something else. The only reason he was able to get in there is because he's in his meat body, because they have scanners for robots. So maybe he'll realize, oh, there's stuff we can do here that only humans can do. There's stuff that like only people are able to do. No, then he gets picked up by a different body of Cromwell, who is like, oh, I'm also looking for my son's killer because you're not doing a good, fast enough job or whatever.
He's in a child's body, or a child surrogate for this scene as well, which just felt awkward because the acting was terrible and all sorts.
Yeah, they also, one thing they set up at the beginning is that Cromwell has multiple surrogate bodies that he can jump between, and apparently that's illegal. You're only able to have one that's linked to your body, but he's like, I made him. I can do whatever I want. Shut up.
Yeah, you got that, and then he goes investigating. Basically, he tries to set him on the path of discovering the FBI's behind hiring this guy, so that Bruce Willis will suspect his boss, Stone, his name is, that he's actually behind things. So that's kind of the thread they go on. There is a section in here somewhere where it does cut to the real partner. So Radha Mitchell's character, Peters, it cuts to her, and it is her playing her, but she's, she's kind of like a slob, and she's like got a filthy shirt on, and she's clearly just living a miserable life at home.
She's significantly like older and more disheveled as well.
I don't even think she's that much older, to be honest.
Yeah, she looked like it. I mean, I just saw like gray hair and a bit more like saggier of a shirt. That's what I was getting.
I just felt she was dirtier and like unkempt and to me, and like, didn't have any makeup on, that kind of thing.
Yeah, fair.
But so we see her life, and then the big important plot beat for that is that someone shows up at her place later, like an assassin, sneaks in, like you said, like asking why burglaries aren't like going through the roof. This guy just sneaks in, accesses her like memory, like her footage of her POV, sees a bunch of stuff, and then chooses to shoot her in her sleep. And then that means that when her surrogate wakes up, we know it's actually someone else piloting her. So it's like, oh, okay, I can see why this is an idea to infiltrate someone and we don't even know that they've been replaced because they're just using the same body. Okay, that's a fun idea. It should be scarier than it is, but I get why you're doing it. So it turns out Cornwell's behind this guy, so it's actually Cornwell who's just piloting her now. And the important plot beat of that is that in the footage of her memory was the guy at the computers explaining they can access all of the surrogates. This becomes the big third act kind of like, you know, ticking time bomb, and she's going, or Cornwell using her body is going to try and use this electrical gun on that system to fry everyone who's connected to a surrogate at the same time. That's the big thing we're going to be trying to stop. This isn't before, of course, Bruce Willis realizes that she's been replaced and she tries to like turn him in, but we get like a car chase. The result, which there's a couple of things here I want to point out about this. Obviously, there's a lot of her jumping in her like high heels, which just looks really silly. But the thing that really pissed me off was they try to do a bit here that's meant to be darkly funny, where Bruce Willis just plows through a bunch of people because they're surrogates, so he doesn't care about hitting them. But again, I have to re-emphasize that there's no guarantee that there aren't some real people on the street. Like, there could still be some real people in there, and he just doesn't care. And it's mostly played for, like, a laugh. That he's just, his body's just piling up in front of the car.
No, this scene was the scene I was talking about, where it's so poorly thought out and so poorly executed, of just leaping around car to car, and it's so dumb the entire time. And it's supposed to be like this big, we need an action set piece here in the third act, because honestly, a lot of the third act is more tension and like making sure the code is in by the right time and blah blah blah. It's not a lot of big action. This is kind of the biggest action you get there in the third act, and it's so dumb. It's so incredibly boring and dull. And by the time it wraps up, honest to God, I couldn't even tell you how it wraps up. I'm pretty sure he accidentally drives into a storefront, and the cops are after, because we skipped over a whole thing where he assaulted his boss because he thinks his boss is part of the bad side of things. He's working for the bad guys because he found out the link between the government and the FBI. And
his
all
boss isn't working for the real villain, but his boss is trying to keep the surrogate world alive and is doing shady stuff to help keep it alive. So he's still kind of bad, but he's not like connected to the main bad guy that he thought he was. As
far as Bruce Willis is concerned, whoever pulled the trigger on the EMP gun is the bad guy, and the boss is behind him. So he views him as the bad guy. There was also a sequence in there where the boss sees the female agent being piloted by Cromwell looking through like a bunch of internal files and stuff like that. And he's like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm investigating the robot company to see their stuff." And she's like, "That's our internal filings. Like, that's about us. You want the 7th floor." And then just walks away. And I'm like, what? Clearly that was suspicious. Clearly that was the dumbest thing you could have done.
Yeah, a lot of the characters in this kind of suck. I think their boss at the FBI is just such a thin, like, I'm just going to be kind of stern and the angry FBI boss like all the time. Like, he's very, very wafer thin. And then, of course, the joke of cutting to his real person, and you see that he's not shaved and he's kind of unkempt again, like other people have been. It's just kind of, it feels like, are we not doing something more interesting? Because if you're not going to do something interesting with who the real person is, then don't even show me him. Like, it's just because it just feels like a nothing thing. He ends up getting killed by her because when she actually takes over the area with the computers, she kills him, and because Cornwell blames him for the death of his son, because he's the one that ordered the hit in the first place. So that happens a little bit later.
The only other thing that happens in between there is Bruce Willis goes and talks to a military guy who he talked to at the beginning of the movie as well, when he was just trying to get general answers. And the military guy's like, "We have no idea what you're talking about a magic gun that can kill people." And he's like, "Okay, well, I know where it is." And the guy's like, "Where is it? We lost it. You got to tell us where it's at, man." And so they give the backstory that apparently this isn't just like an EMP, it's a... He uses the term... it's a mind virus. It's the dumbest possible explanation they could come up with. But he says, okay, it's over in this encampment of the people who hate robots. And so this guy fires up an entire military operation. And I love this sequence so much because the very first words he says as they touch down is, now remember, these are all real people. Do not fire unless you absolutely have to, because we're all in robot bodies. It's not a big deal for us. And then one person fires one shot at the soldiers and they let loose. They kill every single person in this camp.
It's one shot, and then it's that scene from Predator where they're all just firing into the jungle, just like wasting thousands of rounds of ammunition, like annihilate everything. The big reveal there at the end of that, of course, is they shoot Ving Rhames' character and it's revealed that he's an android, and it doesn't even let you contemplate who it might be that's actually piloting him. It just cuts immediately to Cornwell. It's like, oh, he's been doing this the whole time. Bruce Willis's goal here is to get to Cornwell because he still doesn't know what's going on, so he's going to him next to try and fix whatever's happening. Before we get to that, though, I do want to go back and talk about him and his wife a little bit, because one of my biggest problems in this movie, or the biggest kind of like moment that shows how poorly written this is that there's a whole scene where he comes back to the house and she's with some friends, and this is the scene where they're using the shock stick and all that, right? And she's not doing it. She's kind of off, like, fixing her earrings to the side. But he comes in, sees all these people who are clearly drunk, or I don't know if the robots can get drunk, but whatever they're doing, right?
The equivalent.
Yeah. So, and he clearly looks a little upset because she's like, oh, I thought you were still in the hospital. And he's like, oh, clearly. And they have a little bit of a fight where he's like, no, you go have a good time. I want my real wife. I don't really want the robot. You go and do whatever. And they have this kind of, like, fight, falling out, whatever you want to call it. And then the scene just cuts to a next scene, but the very next scene, there's nothing in between. It cuts to him coming out of his room again and just sort of walking out and seeing her there with these people again. And it felt like, okay, obviously time has passed and he's like, leaving to go do something else. But like, it feels so clunky to cut from the scene where they have this initial fight and then just cut immediately to him coming out of his room in the same location again. It's so bad in terms of structure and editing. And immediately, of course, this is where he gets angry again and beats up the other robot dude because he's flirting with the wife. And he punches him so hard that the face comes off and it's just the robot face. And I'm like, okay, like, I get what you're doing here, but this is so weird to have these two scenes back to back without anything in between them.
Yeah, there's one piece of trivia that I don't have any more backstory on, but according to IMDb, because an uncooperative Bruce Willis refused to re-record several lines of dialogue when the movie was being restructured, a sound-alike voiceover actor had to be brought in. That being restructured thing speaks volumes to me, where whatever happened, they filmed this, they realized something in the pacing's not working, we got to rearrange things, and we end up with cuts like that.
Yeah, and to be honest, it's not even just the cut. Like, the cut's bad, but it's also just in general, it feels weird to have, like, from a narrative structure point of view, have this fight and then... Because in any other movie, you'd have this scene where he feels uneasy about his wife having these friends, and you'd have that scene take place in the first act. Then maybe towards the end of Act 2, you'd have this scene where he sees a similar scene again, and then, but this time he loses his temper. It escalates to him blowing up, right? Like, just from a structure perspective, you wouldn't have those, you wouldn't set it up in one scene and then pay it off immediately in the next scene. You'd have it be separated by lots of growth and plot.
Yeah, I mean, or at the very least, if you want to imply that this is just constantly simmering under there, have him walk by his kid's bedroom. Like, they've shown this bedroom numerous times of it being something where he's wistful for the old days. Have him just be like, you know what, you do whatever you want to do. He sees the kid's bedroom and he's like, you know what, screw that. I'm pissed off and I'm going to let you know how pissed off I am. But you're right, he just walks down the hallway and then he's like, all of a sudden I've had a character shift.
Yeah, so that's pretty rough. He goes to her workplace the next day to kind of apologize, but kind of beg her to consider, being human again. And she's like, "Oh, I can't. The only way I can leave the house is to be a surrogate." And it's like, okay, she's the one that's in jeopardy later when someone's going to kill everyone that's connected to a surrogate body. So that's like meant to be your personal connection. So on paper, it's doing the right thing of trying to give us someone to care about who is personal to the main character. But it's such a poorly written, like, not even romance, that's not the right word, but like, drama between the two of them. The relationship's so poorly written that it's impossible to give a shit. So when it gets to the big standoff, right, where he confronts Cornwell's got him at gunpoint and is like, yes, I'm behind it all. I'm going to kill everyone who's on a surrogate body, because we see that the FBI lady's body, piloted by him, is at the computer center, killed the other FBI boss. The techie guy who we met earlier is like handcuffed to the railing and is begging him not to do what he's going to do. But yeah, he's hooking it all up to kill everyone. It does beg the question, though, maybe they just couldn't tell, but why did the rest of the FBI not storm the room when clearly like the body's on pause because Cornwell's taken off the headset to talk to Bruce Willis? There's an entire segment where she's just standing there like asleep, basically, because he's having a chat with Bruce.
Because it's too much of a risk if the gun is even in the room. They can't risk it. He's not going to come back out of it immediately. That's all I got.
Yeah, because they do the whole thing here, which again, it is an interesting idea that they could have done more with, is that when they're going to this like computer room initially with the FBI boss, he's like, okay, let's go in guns blazing, and someone says, no, we can't, there's a real human in there, and he gets mad because, that slob tech asshole's in there's a real person, we have to take this carefully. Like, that idea of, like, the authorities being annoyed that they can't go in, like, the Wild West because there's a real person is an interesting thing to play with, of, like, these different situations where there's a meat sack in there and there's not a meat sack in there, and how they approach that differently. There's something there to explore, but the movie, this is it. This is all you get of it. It has mild annoyance in one scene.
Yeah.
So
also, I mean, you keep on saying this idea of, like, everyone, we're told that everyone is inside these things, but what proof are we given that everyone is a surrogate? The very fact that the tech guy explicitly says, no, I'm not a surrogate. I would never get in a surrogate body. I don't trust that stuff because I've seen how I am the guy who can hack into the back end and see all the stuff going on. Like, he's the only one in all of humanity. He's the only one who decided that.
Yeah. Anyway, Cornwell monologues a bit, takes a pill to die, and the ending is basically Bruce Willis putting on the headset to control her body and being like, hey, it's actually me, it's Detective Greer, how do I like stop all this? And basically, like, shockingly quickly, they stop the threat by disconnecting everyone from their human bodies. And I'm like I felt like you should have like milked that for at least another couple of minutes of like trying to solve it, but they solved that very quickly, and it's like, okay, everyone's safe. And then the tech guy's like, but we still have to save the surrogates. And I'm like, wait, I'm supposed to care about that? And then it presents Bruce Willis with the choice where it's like, hey, to save the surrogates, you have to like, press this button. And it becomes a literal yes or no. It comes up on the screen. Do you want to do this? Yes or no? And he's like, okay, just press yes and it'll save all the surrogate bodies. And then Bruce Willis pauses and he's like, oh, wait a minute. I have a choice to return humanity to all, to disconnect everyone and destroy all the surrogate robots so that everyone is forced to be a human again. And I get why that character would be tempted by that choice, but the movie should have ended with him saying, no, I won't make that choice for everyone, because the choice, it's not like forcing his wife to not have that option is not the good dramatic outcome. The good dramatic outcome at the end of her story, if her character story was well written, would be the healthy option of her choosing to not want to just be a robot anymore. But he makes that choice for everyone on Earth, seemingly, not just America. We get mentions of Beijing, of London, of everywhere that has these surrogates. And again, I return to that one question that I asked earlier on. You're telling me that there's not planes in the sky where there's a surrogate, or there's like one passenger who's a real human being, and because like the surrogate pilot's now offline?
It's so much easier than that. The planes are in the sky. The planes are flying over cities.
Oh yeah,
the people are in the cities.
Yeah.
Like they're dead. I looked it up as the credits were playing. I was like, at any given time, how many planes are in the air? The answer: 10,000. People are dead. There are so many people dead. I can barely express to you how many actual loss of life there is here. But it's okay, because we have one of the news things that's going on over the end say, it doesn't seem there's any casualties at this point. Yeah, and I'm like, give it 30 seconds.
No, it's because it's after the fact. It's like it's an aftermath news program, and they literally say there wasn't a single human casualty. Bullshit. Bullshit. How many surrogates were piloting a plane or something else that would cause damage or a problem if people, trains even Like,
I mean, it's even worse than that because they explicitly show, as everyone collapses to the ground all at once, they explicitly show that cars keep going.
Yes.
They show cars colliding. So they're already putting into your head this idea that, oh, well, vehicles, things that are controlled by surrogates, will be continuing onwards. I personally, you know what this is? This is the mild spoilers. I feel like everyone's already seen it, so whatever. But end of Infinity War.
Yeah, say what the movie is first, so people have a choice to ignore you if they want to.
Skip forward 30 seconds, but end of Infinity War, there's the post-credits scene where, everyone gets snapped, the dusting happens, and they show helicopters falling out of the sky. They show that there are some real significant things happening here.
That's not even what I thought of. I thought of The Leftovers, because The Leftovers literally starts with the idea that like 1.2% or whatever the number is of people on Earth just disappear, and because, a couple of those people were pilots or something like that, and those planes would go down and there'd be disasters. That's immediately what my mind went to. So as this is playing out like a sort of like, oh, he's made this, like, again, even if his wife wasn't in the picture, this shouldn't be a choice that he makes. Like, he's basically playing God and saying, no, everyone can't have this option. Like, no, this should be something that the people have to make the choice themselves because they're convinced. Maybe there's like a mass hacking moment or something and it scares everyone out and not using them or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, the ending is so terrible. Like, the end, like, the movie's shit throughout. I think the ending is like special tier garbage, where it just completely misses the point of what the ending point should be and what the story's like climax should be saying. And instead of like the wife making a touching choice to like return to her humanity because it's the healthy option, she instead has been forced into it. And they hug at the end as if, oh, they're going to be happy now. And
I agree with you 100%. That's what I said at the beginning of this, was it's waiting to see whose will break first. That's the thing. Like, the wife was not given the choice here. She was forced into the situation where she has to leave her surrogate. So it's just Bruce Willis saying, hey, honey, I made the decision for you. Aren't you happy now? As you stand mournfully in our dead child's bedroom. But here's the easiest fix, the absolute simplest fix that could have changed all of this. When they said that they can buffer and like disconnect the user from the surrogate, say that it has a 24-hour cooldown, and then it'll come back. So that way, when they disconnect everybody to save everybody from this mind virus, and we don't even have to give Bruce Willis a choice, they disconnect everybody, everyone is forced to live normal lives for just 24 hours. They get the reminder, and that gives people the choice. We get to see that some people choose to stay in that way. Give humanity just a little bit of agency rather than, whatever.
Or alternatively, just say that when they're going to like save everyone, this will save everyone, but it'll destroy all the surrogates. Have it be something where he has to do it or everyone's dead, and it becomes an easy choice. Even if there is a little bit of collateral damage by doing so, it's still the better choice of the two. The way it's presented is just, no, he just makes this choice for everyone, and I'm like, that is unlikable. As much as I agree, not everyone should be tied to these surrogates the way they are. It's unhealthy, obviously, for numerous reasons. It just, the world feels so thin in the way it's been built up that it doesn't feel like it's made the arguments or showed us why. Like, give me more examples of people depending on them and they're too incapable of operating without them. Give us examples of just how much people are dependent on them now. It feels like it just glosses over all of that to focus on the mystery murder plot, and then all the stuff with him and his wife just feels so specific to them that it just, I don't know, like, I know it's meant to represent other situations that might be happening, but it's so poorly written that it does a bad job of being that. So at the end, it cuts to black basically as soon as this news report ends, and I'm just like, well, F you, movie.
Also, it has the same sort of problem of movies that are like, oh, we got rid of all the nukes. What's stopping us from building more?
Yeah,
like,
I also thought that.
You've destroyed all the surrogates. Great. And you're telling me there's not just going to be a power vacuum where all of a sudden it's like, and now more surrogates have been made in different forms. Hooray. Great job. You did it.
Yeah, there's nothing stopping the company that made them to make more. It'll take a while to get everyone, out again. But they're just going to make more.
If we had a massive solar flare or something like that hit the planet and it actually ended up frying all of our smartphones, do you not think we would just make more smartphones again? Like, would
course we would.
would we
Yeah.
all of a sudden just be like, oh, you know what? I'm actually fine with living the Amish life. No. Clearly, you would be like, no. How soon can we get that back up and running? How soon until everything's good to go?
The rollout would be insufferable because the first ones would be super expensive because, all the rich would get the new ones first, and then, we'd have to wait till all his poors could get them. But yeah, it would happen. It would absolutely happen. So
if there ever is a solar flare that comes and hits the Earth, you can find both me and Pete will be in our local parks doing podcasting, just in the public sense.
David, put us out of our misery. What are you rating Surrogates out of 10?
It's not good. I think I was trying to be charitable when we began it, but yeah, it's just, I like the world. And even I think my biggest problem is I actually, as we were reviewing it, was clicking through the comic and I realized like, oh, there was nothing on either side of this. This was top to bottom, just not great. So yeah, I'm thinking I'm coming down under the 5. It's probably going to be, I'm going to say a 3.5. I think that's where I'm coming at this one. It's definitely not at a 4 for me. I think a 4 would still have some level of feeling like I care at all, even if it's very minute. But by the time this one ended, I was more disappointed than I was pleased at how much was missed opportunities the whole way through. They were handed so many more interesting plot lines, and they just kept choosing to go with the most boring one. So I'm going to say 3.5.
Yeah, it's slop. I mean, that's the word that comes to mind. It just feels like slop. It feels like something made by committee, restructured, re-edited. Every interesting idea is not explored properly, even though the ideas on paper are fine or even good. I think a 3 is a ceiling for me. I'm even tempted to drop it a little bit more because I did find it unpleasant. I'm going to say 2.5. I think I'm landing on a 2.5.
All right.
Yeah, trash. So David's got a homework movie, of course, which we'll get to in a second, but I'll just take this moment to tell you all about patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and YouTube membership, which is how you can support us and get access to the bonus rating segments where we rate the individual categories, but we also give it the coveted Sexual Tension Award for each movie now. And that's always a bit of a laugh. So you can check out that. If you support us, you can also get Extra Reels, which is a monthly show we do where we review the worst movies ever made. And of course, there's bonuses for Collector's Cut, our other show, which, we're currently doing 70s thrillers over there. That's a fun season. We do seasons of movies on that show. So yeah, check out the other stuff. Check out the other shows, Screams After Midnight. And if you want to support us, thanks to everyone who already supports us. Any support in any direction is great, whether it be Patreon, YouTube membership, like a one-time super thanks even on YouTube. All greatly appreciated, so thank you very much to everyone who does. And next week on the show, which is also something I should do, because I sometimes forget to tell you, we're looking at another recent sci-fi movie that I did see get a little bit of buzz when I went looking for movies to find, and it's called Linoleum. So we'll see how that shapes up next time. Don't really know a lot about it. This is kind of a complete, blind watch for both of us, I assume. So we'll see how that is next time. Can't be worse than Surrogates, I imagine. Or if it is, then we're in for a really rough time.
I was going to say, Pete, you're setting us up for failure there.
But, of course, each week on the show, David goes back and watches a movie that we did on the Ace before he joined the show, from the Tara reign, if you will. So what was this week's homework movie, David?
Well, I was really intent on sticking with the director and doing Terminator 3.
Oh.
But turns out I never did Terminator 2, so I'm not going to do that out of order.
Okay.
So I had to go with something else. I decided to stick with my boy, Big Willie Brucey, and I went ahead and did Fifth Element because why not? Also, strangely enough, within, past 2-3 weeks of recording this, I was at a hotel for a vacation, and this was just randomly on the TV in the lobby, so I was catching pieces of this, and I was like, you know what, I remember Fifth Element, may as well sit down and watch the whole thing. So
that's good.
I had seen this one before. I don't think I ever really sat down with an appreciation of it, though. I always sat down just out of like whatever, it's on, I'll go ahead and sit and watch it. This is the first time I sat down with the intention of criticism, going in with an opinion of it, and I think in what I've missed in the previous viewings of it is just how campy it is, just how much fun they're having. Like, it's not something where it is this gritty sci-fi movie where it's you know, I mean, it's made in 97, where it feels like it's trying to be the dark, edgy Matrix sort of thing that we're going to get to soon enough. This feels very much I'll say space adventure, space opera sort of thing, where it's just having fun with the setting of it. If you want to talk about the best story to do in a setting, this is absolutely up for contention on that. Also, I never really noticed how much the pacing is similar to Star Wars New Hope for me, where in my mind, whenever I think of Fifth Element, I think of the getting the stones element of the plot is up to the midway point. And then there's the pivot over into the third act where it's defeating the big bad. But this is much more where the stones is most of the plot, the same way that rescuing Princess Leia is most of the plot. And then we get the final bit is the big action adventure sequence.
That's not what I thought you were going to say, because I would say that it's kind of like A New Hope in the sense that, like, you probably remember them getting to the spaceship really early, but it's actually like halfway through. Right. Same with the Death Star and A New Hope, where you spend like the first half, you know, in this futuristic version, and I think it's New York, or maybe I don't know if they even say, but like, you know, it does all the setup of that stuff, and then you get the stuff on the ship, and then you get your your climax afterwards. I think what's really so interesting about Fifth Element is it is very fun. It feels like they're just being playful and doing a bunch of stuff, and there's a lot of entertaining characters and actors who are really, you know, full of charisma, who are making all those roles work. The thing that's weird for me is like it, and this isn't even a complaint. It's actually kind of cool and notable that it breaks some fundamental storytelling rules, but it doesn't matter. The hero and the villain of that movie never interact. Bruce Willis and Gary Oldman never talk to each other. They never even know of each other's existence, pretty much. And it doesn't matter. The movie still works. Yeah, absolutely. I really like how the movie juggles its plots, because it's not like there's just good guy versus bad guy. There's multiple aspects of bad guys. There's multiple aspects of good guys. And they're all moving towards the same point, but all for their different motivations and different reasons as well. So it does a great job with that, and also calling out the editing as well. If Surrogates had a problem with restructuring where it felt like nothing flowed, Fifth Element, I noticed they kept on doing a thing where the end of a scene, the end of a sequence even, would mention something or do something that immediately led into the first shot of whatever the next sequence is. Like someone says something of like, oh, we've only got like 5 minutes to get out of here. And then the very next thing is the next sequence. It's totally separate, but it's a 5-minute countdown timer. It's not, and that just keeps happening. It keeps on flowing into the next scene so organically, where it doesn't even really feel like it's doing separate scenes. It feels like it's all flowing so naturally together that it is just one big continuous piece. That's the magic trick.
Yeah, no, it really is great. The only thing I will say is that there's one or two things that they bring up for Lilu, obviously the main female character, to do, where it feels like she's set up to do a lot more, set up to do more exploration for a character, and it's kind of trimmed back. It doesn't feel like it's given as much as is promised throughout the plot, but it's still very well done. I still like her as a character. Just by the point she's introduced, she's such a likable presence on screen. I really don't have an issue with her.
Multi-pass.
Exactly. So yeah, it's a great movie. Honest to God, I'm looking at the ratings that you and Tara gave it. I don't know why Tara gave it so low as a 6. I don't see that. I thought that would be right up her alley of this sort of campy, more fun movie, but clearly something didn't stick. But I think for me, this one's I'm gonna say an 8. I was gonna say 7.5, but honestly, even just talking about it for that brief period of time, I think it gets up to an 8 for me. I think it is one of those movies where if it were ever remade, if it were ever given another like try at it, I think it would lose all of the flavor that made it something so special.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. No, fun movie. Yeah. So it's one that's kind of stuck with me. I remember seeing it in theaters when I was 8, and it's just kind of stuck around since. But all right, there you go. That is this week's Atomic Cinema Experiment. Like I said, Linoleum is next week's movie. Check out 70s Thriller season over in Collector's Cut. But that is the show. Thank you for joining us. We do appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction and computer ad salsa.